Hey there, Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon here as we're tracking a potential for severe weather and possibly tornadoes today. I'm joined alongside our meteorologists Maggye McCauley and Caleb Edelblut, who are going to be helping us on our discussion here. Maggye, Caleb, thank you so much for joining us here this morning. It's about 11 o'clock. You guys have both been up probably a little longer than I have. I know Caleb driving in very early this morning, Maggye since the beginning of the day. How are things evolving based on what you were thinking?
Things are a little bit earlier. Maybe you could attest to that as well than we were previously thinking. But models have been kind of hinting since I think yesterday afternoon and evening about an earlier and earlier start to this. But when I woke up this morning, where storms were was very surprising to me, just of how close they were to our area. So then I kind of had to step up from there and time out things for everybody this morning based on where storms were. So that's the main thing that's been a little bit different to me this morning is just the earlier aspect of it. And maybe you can attest to that, seeing a lot more models and model data last night, but I'm comparing it to yesterday morning when I kind of did that deep dive. So just a little bit of
I think some of these, especially up into Tennessee, I think that's similar to what we were looking at last night. It might be running just a little bit faster. I mean, I guess it is 11 o'clock, not noon time. Probably about 30, 40 miles east of that. I hope that's something that spells well for us. But I think it's going to be these outflows, rain cooled air left from whatever this is here that as the afternoon storms get going could be one of the focal points, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think we're almost in, I hate to call it a lull, but we're waiting for the afternoon, right? We're waiting for those storms to push more into Northeast Mississippi, tap into more of that fuel and all of that going into the afternoon. So kind of just keeping our close eye on things right now. But I'm in Senatobia. It was loud. Those storms rolled through, or at least that leading storm did. And all it is right now is heavy rain. You see behind me this MDOT traffic camera in Hernando. This is what we're dealing with right now, just not great overall driving conditions. But again, Matt, keeping our close eye on things as we head into the afternoon.
Okay, and we'll talk a lot more about that here in a minute. I'm going to bring in Caleb here for a moment. You know, what you have behind you there is kind of the next thing that we have in line, right? That's that area in red you see includes most of North Mississippi, back in Louisiana, Texas. That's where we could be looking at a tornado watch in the next couple of hours. We're putting in the likely category, right?
Yes, no, this was the mesoscale discussion just posted almost at just under an hour ago, kind of showing where we could start seeing that become a little bit more evident within the next few hours. And one of the things I also wanted to mention and talk about on my drive over here, one of the things that is aiding with some storm activity to pop up within this red outlined area is those cloud breaks. And I noticed on the way here, that cloud cover started to become a little bit less as I got closer and closer towards Mississippi. So with that daytime heating could start to impact the forecast just a little bit more and provide some more kind of moisture and fuel for those storms. So something that we want to keep watching. They've mentioned in this mesoscale discussion as well, Matt.
Absolutely. We'll dig more into all that here in just a moment. So here's our risk area for today. Involves all locations here in North Mississippi. It's a very large risk. We should see the next update from the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma within about the next 20 minutes or so on this kind of outlook. The outlook comes first, the watch comes second, the warning comes third. And that's as we kind of forecast, funnel our way down into the most important thing for you and me at home. Once you're in a warning, something is likely happening or going to occur soon. In an outlook, these are the spots that we're most concentrating on, kind of looking on a wider scale. So we drill down from here to the watch, which is what Caleb was talking about. So this is the wide look at this here. We'll get closer in a moment. We start talking about the tornado potential for today. This is a very similar graphic and everything that it has on it versus where we were yesterday. And it does include the potential for strong tornadoes. All locations we talked about yesterday and still the case today. When you see kind of this reddish sort of color here, this deep red, that would be associated with where we could see on the potential intensity a tornado up to EF2 strength. 2 doesn't sound like much on a scale that goes from 0 to 5. It should be something you consider. When you think of 5 as basically complete destruction, and then 4 is pretty close to that, 2 and 3 start sounding pretty impressive. And an EF2 tornado is one that starts causing damage to well-built structures. You'll still have most of the structure there, but that's when you're starting to see the roof lift off. That's when you're starting to see some walls see significant damage to a well-built structure as well. So when we start talking about up to EF2 strength, That's what we should note there, that it's possible we could have an isolated strong tornado today. The damaging wind threat does include all locations. As Maggye talked about earlier this morning, the orange areas here, a level 3 out of 5. We talked about how we would see kind of an upgrade on that risk level today. It does not show up on the overall risk level because while the odds are greater, we're probably not talking about high-end wind. In fact, when we're talking specifically about significant wind gusts in excess of 75 miles per hour, probably not the case. So what is this graphic here showing the bullseye actually giving us? This gives us a bullseye on where we will see right there the number of reports, the greatest number of reports from Monroe, Louisiana to Jackson to Hattiesburg, closer to Mobile and South Alabama. So for us, the takeaway should be we will have some sporadic wind reports. I think they'll be mainly limited to isolated and overall number, but that's not to say we don't have some trees into homes, things like that, like we had earlier this week in the Columbus area. It's a very real possibility we could have that once again this time around as well. So that's kind of the overall setup. Let's work here to Mama Justice Doppler radar, kind of show you the way in which things are looking as of the 11 o'clock hour. We're watching this kind of lead line of storms here out from around Shelby back there toward Duncan, Clarksdale back into the Sardis area. You know, I was looking at the Shelby camera here just a moment ago behind the scenes, a couple that we're looking out there in Cleveland, Shelby, as well as Clarksdale, all kind of having the rainfall moving through. It's 73 right there just at that line. The measure of moisture, that dew point in the upper 60s. So we do have a fair amount of fuel, and those winds south and west at 21 miles per hour. That's some fairly breezy conditions kind of flowing into these storms. Clarksdale, kind of a similar shot as of this hour here. We're looking at about 75 degrees there. And again, a lot of rainfall. But just to the east of that, I think Batesville should still be in the clear. Our camera in Oxford down at the moment because of the storms earlier this week, but looking from Batesville back into those storms. Still breezy, still 75 degrees, still unstable air. What we think is going to happen, this is where I bring Caleb and Maggye back in here for a moment, is, again, we have the rain-cooled air with these storms. You can see that kind of behind you. Where are you looking on that, Maggye, for a second? Before I get on, don't want to go too far on a tangent, but where are you looking at that?
No, this is 55 north over in DeSoto County. So just
Okay, yeah.
showing that where that heavy rain is in DeSoto County.
Okay, yeah. So obviously, once you get behind this line, it's going to be difficult for storms to regenerate and produce tornadoes. Not impossible, but difficult. Fair assessment?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's why we're keeping our eye on Northeast Mississippi and why that highlighted area is going further into the eastern portion of the state on where a watch is likely to be issued.
Okay, Caleb, you have something else there behind you. What is that that looks like you pulled up?
Well, this was part of the discussion that I wanted to read out. It kind of matches almost perfectly to what you were talking about last night with that low confidence, high impact type of forecast we're dealing with today. It says for farther northeast, weaker instability and more line parallel deep layer flow may support less coverage / amplitude of severe initially. So kind of talking about those, I know those are big terms, but you were talking about those outflow boundaries last night.
This is your college test for spring break. Translate that.
I know I'm still in that mindset, but what you were talking about last night with those outflow bands and kind of blowing into those storms and cells prefrontal activity, I think that's going to determine kind of a lot of what we could see as well, especially the further northeast we go for our viewing area, especially seeing that more severe risk, just a little bit more southern on the overall grand scheme, but that still kind of remains the big question on those outflow bands as we get ready for the afternoon hours ahead.
Okay, so let's go to that here for a moment. Let's go back here to Mama Justice Doppler radar. We show the radar, and you reminded me of what we need to look at, which is we need to look at the visible satellite. I'm going to see if we can find the right visible. You're kidding me. They have the two visible sections on either side of us. They're land massing us here in Mississippi. Oh well. So I still can hopefully see down here into this. We don't get to choose where the folks at NOAA put their high-res visible segments. We can still look in between. We still have decent coverage, but I would have liked to see like the super res there on that. So let's make this a 3-hour loop, and we're going to make this kind of I'm going to make this go 5-minute data so we can see this. What I'm looking for here is we sometimes get these kind of cloud streets where you just happen to have, you can see convergence bands within the cloud cover itself. That's what I'm watching for, to see if we have a convergence band in the cloud cover itself there that kind of indicates. We're going to go look at a few different perspectives here, see if we've got it. I'm going to make this a shorter loop. Let's make this 2 hours, and let's make it just a little bit faster. So hopefully that maybe stands out. So what I'm looking at here, the fuzziness you see, those are the high, thin clouds going overhead. The kind of brighter white colors you see there, those are spots where we have more localized enhancements there that could potentially be, a better convergence. You can see some spots there closer to Hattiesburg. I'll put it to now here, where you can see that out right about there, closer to the Hattiesburg area. What I am concerned for and looking for is if there's a location where we can see some confluence. What is that? Well, that is where perhaps you have slightly more southerly wind and slightly more southwesterly wind, and you get some kind of boundary between that. And where you have that convergence, that confluence, where air is kind of coming together there, that's when you're most likely to have maybe an enhancement that then helps storms to get a little bit stronger just in that zone there. So I'm looking at our 3-hour loop here. I don't have an obvious one, partially because I think we're shaded over with these high, thin clouds. I can still kind of see a boundary here, maybe near Kosciuszko. Let's watch this loop here. From Jackson to Canton to Kosciuszko, see how there's just a difference in the brightness of the clouds there if we come up here to North Mississippi between what we have showing up back here toward Bruce and what we have out toward Amory. This could be kind of the northern edge of kind of our effective warm front. What that means is there's kind of a northern periphery there where we have just slightly more unstable air. Let me go and draw on here for a moment. Now, again, one of these days I'll get a more modern reference, but John Madden, when I was growing up, was always the guy, and I guess into my formative years, teens, college, whatever, that would always illustrate a lot. But you get kind of an area here where south of this, it is warmer and also more moist. And so you kind of have this effective area where as these storms that are less impressive out here kind of move eastward, they hit that extra burst right at this boundary, sometimes have an extra little bit of shear. And if one of those storms can kind of have enough of a southwest to northeast movement and get attached near this boundary, then we end up in a scenario where we have more rotation and more likely to possibly produce a tornado. I want to bring Maggye in for her thoughts on this morning. You're again looking at this. You've been looking at a lot of things this morning, a lot of stuff behind the scenes. Does that kind of jive with what you're looking at? I told you before we went on the air, I want you to call me out if you think I'm wrong on anything. This is not a yes, Matt, you're right scenario. Give me your thoughts.
Right. No, but I generally agree. And I also agree when it comes to some of our futurecast high resolution data, kind of jiving with that as well. That area that you're kind of highlighting between Lee County, Monroe County, stretching down into Attala County, that's when we start to see a few of those cells, again, on high resolution this afternoon.
Now you're looking at HRRR here?
Yes, I was looking at HRRR. I was looking at our in-house Barron model too, but HRRR is the one I used this morning. But I think that's that area that we're going to be really concerned with into the afternoon on if there's some specific rotation as well. Again, as things kind of push out ahead of that line, just keeping an eye on things of that nature. So again, I don't
we're
think
kind of looking here. This is about 5 p.m. or so, and I want you to tell me how this compares to what we were looking at before there. So this is that high resolution rapid refresh. This model comes in once an hour. So the one that Maggye was showing this morning, that's in the past. There's a new version coming in, and the positioning will kind of alter a little bit. Tell me how this looks, again, timing-wise and storm-wise versus what you're looking at. I think, again, as far as current positioning is concerned, it might be just a little bit slow.
And it was a little slow this morning, but it's more caught up than it was.
So it's interesting that, some of these I'll try to get out of the way here. Back out in southern Arkansas, showing a little more rotation there. So that would be still west of that boundary we're looking at there. I think it'd take all the way here until maybe 2 to 3. I mean, this should show 3 o'clock. I would say more like 2 o'clock before storms are kind of getting maybe far enough east there to start interacting a little bit more with that boundary. But the thing is that boundary could also move northward a little bit, right?
Yeah, it could. But overall positioning, looking pretty good on that. Again, the timing's still just slightly off, and it was this morning. I mean, it was saying what we have right now was going to happen in an hour. So just kind of seeing that 45 minutes to an hour off. But
one of the things that concerns me on this, Maggye, is this Ackerman storm. And again, this is one storm, one time. Yeah. Time's probably wrong, position's probably wrong. But what concerns me on this is that is a clearly discrete storm. Forms there, it shows Attala County, Choctaw County, and then it develops kind of a rotation track of its own. So that would be a discrete supercell, meaning kind of by itself ahead, forming in that warmest sector, that most unstable air, near that effective warm front that would be kind of our worst case scenario where this maybe produces a strong tornado.
Yeah, and I was kind of talking about that this morning, though. That's what we're most concerned with, is those cells that are up ahead, able to tap into that moisture and fuel, and then try to have some rotation with them. I think those are the storms we'd be concerned with to be up to EF2, right? The concerning. Go ahead.
Upper level winds on this. This is, sometimes we have what's called a synoptically obvious severe weather setup, and you could argue that this definitely is. But if I pull up the JET, I'm going to pull up the jet stream, and again, we're going to use GFS jet stream, which is not perfect by any stretch, but it's easy for me to pop in here real quick. We don't have super duper perfect winds when you go aloft on this system, right? Like we have divergence, diffluence there, where it's kind of going apart. Where you can see if you track your lines, this is going farther apart than that one there is at that point in time. So we do have that diffluence there, but we don't also have like a perfect jet streak coming through. Like sometimes we'll get really, really strong winds aloft. How much do you think that impacts this?
Well, I definitely wouldn't say it's a perfect setup by any means. I think it's already kind of impacting the overall structure and the system that we're seeing passing through. But again, I think the question remains, how much fuel can we get in some of those most southern counties through the afternoon? I think that will be able to kind of overcome, storms will be able to tap into that and kind of overcome the obstacles, depending on, again, the sun and the fuel and where that line sets up.
Yeah, so I mean, this is favorable for severe weather, but thankfully, I think not a perfect setup. If there's something I think goes wrong on this and keeps us from having tornadoes, I'm hopeful that this could be that thing, because we do have the instability, we have that low-level surface boundary. I'm hopeful that the one thing that got me looking at this is when we went back, and if we kind of pull back up that rotation here, the storm rotation on this, the fact that you have that thunderstorm, this storm down here, we're shown near Ackerman. Again, positioning on this, I'm not ignoring you in Houston. This is going to be closer to that boundary. This is the more likely scenario where we're going to have the storms that are stronger. But this one down south, when we get them by themselves ahead, we always have really big concerns with that. But notice how you go from very few storms to quite a few storms all at once. That makes me wonder if maybe we lack a little bit of the shear at just that spot there to kind of keep them discrete longer. Or we just,
Right.
We start having a lot of storms. So we only have about an hour and a half where that has that one really rotating, trying to produce something there closer to West Point, obviously Golden Triangle. That's just one thing that got me thinking about that. Thoughts?
Yeah, no, and I think it's good to see it not long track in that storm rotation, right? We don't see that shear marker keep going. So that's some good news with that discrete cell. It's not going to keep going on its own through our area. We kind of see it stopping and kind of joining the line there. So that's some good news out of it, again, if it does develop. But the question is, will it be able to? Will we see those develop outside of the line? But again, just a little bit of good news in that.
Yeah, hopefully. So we'll go back here again. That's what we're looking at. When we kind of see this zone here close to around the Golden Triangle. That's when we're kind of looking at this area here, where we're kind of really close into the positioning on this. If this shifts a little bit farther north and west, maybe we intercept this sooner. Everything kind of falls into place. So it falls out of place for this. So this will be one of those focal points there, in kind of the warm sector, the warm, more humid and more unstable air. Probably just as easily and probably should have more effectively kind of drawn on the little rounded shapes up here to show that this is kind of a warm front, or it really honestly might be more of a stalled kind of sort of frontal boundary. It's not a perfect front, but either way, we kind of have things working on both sides of this here, and it has an effective extra burst of energy for these storms to kind of work off of there. As I kind of bring it back here to Mama Justice Doppler radar, and again, we hope you'll join our conversation here behind the scenes. Appreciate y'all watching from Boone, from Nettleton, from all across the area, Corinth and Pontotoc. We're expecting this afternoon, if you're watching us here, that you have a severe weather threat. I know a lot of folks are going to say, what about my specific community? So let's be crystal clear for all of us watching here in North Mississippi. Everybody is included in this threat. So our severe weather threat, as you can see, does include a tornado threat that involves everybody. Maybe a slightly better chance for those tornadoes to develop in the yellow zone here. But if they can develop, it's an equal chance that we could have a brief strong tornado out of this. Now, I see that Brittany saying her anxiety is through the roof. Let's be clear. This is likened to a long-range shot, right? We talked about this last night in our evening shows, myself and our meteorologist Gabe Maynor. This is somewhat equivalent to I'm standing on the other side of half court with a basketball and I'm going to throw it in at the last second, hoping to make a three-pointer, right? Sometimes you hit that and it's high impact on winning the game, but it's a low confidence scenario. Even a professional athlete throwing that ball, they know it's a lot less likely than if they're going in for a layup. And that's where these two graphics come in. This shows our confidence in something happening, the number of reports. Confidence is greater south and west, and it'll have a greater likelihood to have maybe more than one or a tornado touchdown in those spots. But despite the confidence being greater there, it's high impact if it happens. We're more likely to see a strong tornado, EF2 or weaker. And EF2 is strong enough to cause some damage to well-built structures. So again, appreciate y'all in the conversation there. All locations watching us here in North Mississippi involved in this potential there. I see someone mentioning the tornado anxieties from 2023 in Amory. That was, I would say, as I bring Caleb and Maggye back in here for a moment, a kind of a more synoptically obvious setup than this. We knew we were for sure talking about high-end EF3 greater tornadoes that day. That is not our scenario here. If we were to see a strong tornado, we're probably not talking high-end EF3, EF4, EF5. That's not our scenario here, unless something dramatically changes over the next few hours. Would you guys agree?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you can see it in our risk area too. Like we're not looking at a 4 or 5 risk area day. We don't even have an enhanced risk yet. So I think you can see that with the number of reports we're going to see. Like you were saying, I like the ball in the hoop, shooting it from half court. It's a very good example because everybody can understand that, right? So again, I know there's anxiety. There's a thing where you need to be aware, right? And paying attention. I was telling that to people this morning. I know there's people at work, kids at home for spring break. Have your alerts on, pay attention. But it's not something we want you to be sitting around and just be anxious about all day. We'll let you know if something turns severe.
Absolutely. So Caleb, we'll come back to you in a minute when that new outlook comes in. Wave me down here in a second, because that's, I think, where we kind of want to touch next. But before we move on, there's really 2 ways in which we can kind of cure your anxiety. One is obviously trying to give you information and let you know. But I'd say the best way is to make sure you have an accurate way to know when you're in danger. And that's where our weather call comes in. We know we've had hundreds of you guys sign up over the course of the last weeks here. Snap a screenshot of the screen. For those of you on Instagram and on TikTok right now, I'll point you back at the screen here. So give me a moment so that I can, don't want to close that. Hold on, I might have messed that up. Hopefully not. But I'm point that back at the screen over there as well. You see there's a QR code, and you can find more information at msliveweather.com/weather call. That's MS like Mississippi, live like we're live right now, weather.com, msliveweather.com/weather call. It's a phone alert system. And if you're watching here going, I don't care about phone calls. Yeah, you do, because a phone call right now would interrupt this live stream, but a text message wouldn't. The whole point is we want to interrupt a live stream like this, or like what you're watching right now, in the case of severe weather, to let you know, hey, something's actually happened. And by the way, moms, dads, your kids probably need this, because God knows even my kids sometimes need help breaking away from whatever they're live streaming, or not necessarily live streaming, but whatever they are focusing on. In case of my son, his Python coding, he is in on that. But a phone call, it breaks that up. That's why weather call is important, even in a day and age where we have an app that delivers this directly to you. Current time is 11:28. Our meteorologist Caleb Edelblut, Maggye McCauley, and I all kind of tracking the potential for severe weather today. What we're looking at here in the room-to-room weather center, what we're waiting on the next couple minutes, is going to be an update to the severe risk area. That typically comes out this time of year now with the time change around 11:30. The fact it has not hit yet means we're probably going to see an upgrade to that risk area. A lot of times, when there's a delay, there is an upgrade that comes to that. So that's what we expect to see here in a minute. I'm going to show you a few things that we have that you can see only here on Mississippi Live. One of those is our storm finder. We have different finders for ice, snow, for rainfall, and for storms. What Storm Finder allows us to do is it allows us to kind of look at where obviously storms are the most likely. For whatever reason, my keyboard here keeps typing something else as soon as I type it. There we go. It allows us to look at where storms are the most likely, and then also kind of look at where the most lightning is. And those sorts of things all kind of combine together, give us an idea of about, let's go 15 hours here, about where we need to kind of concentrate on the most and give us an idea on this kind of secondary line of storms. This is Storm Finder, something you'll see only here on Mississippi Live. First thing I'll say about Storm Finder, instant thing I can't miss, is it is a little slow on its positioning. So let's make some adjustments here on that. We're going to adjust this on our overall model editing eastward to make sure that we have it closer to what we would expect. So I'm going to move it about a half a degree latitude or longitude eastward here to adjust it so that it's right where it should be on current positioning. So we've done that. And then one more thing here to adjust that last half a degree eastward. We believe making adjustments like this is important. That gets it to where it should be up in northwest Mississippi now. Okay, so now let's walk through Storm Finder's explanation. What you can see here is it has primarily a lot more of the lightning showing the stronger thunderstorms next couple of hours here back into Texas, Louisiana, up into Tennessee. Not as much in the Mississippi, but we do have a few of these trying to kick out perhaps some of the stronger wind gusts. We're looking down here. The purples give us an idea on storm chance. The lightning, obviously, the yellows and most of the reds kind of extruding out here. If I look three-dimensionally on this, you can kind of see those kind of showing you greater peaks where there's a greater number of nearly nonstop lightning strikes. And then we have this more questionable area. And this is where that, again, high impact, low confidence combination comes in. So if we slide this forward and we continue to show some of those lightning strikes in more isolated areas, while it might not be the giant complex of thunderstorms that you're seeing back out there into East Texas and Louisiana, it still is a zone where we have some of these that are going to be possibly trying to spin something up here across North Mississippi. So as we advance this eastward, as you'll note, again, less on our strike model here of those isolated thunderstorms developing ahead of the main line. So I think it's doing a less effective job of kind of picking up on that warm frontal boundary. We'll look at something else for that in a minute. But the takeaway being, again, you don't see your biggest peaks of lightning over top of North Mississippi, but you definitely do just south of us, even into this evening and into tonight. So the first thing that I see on this that I can take away is that this is kind of the first round. There's not really a second round of importance that comes in because you notice this could be that showing at 6 p.m., but then how that lightning just never really translates over top of us because we've used up most of the fuel. So my takeaway looking at Storm Finder here, again, an exclusive you'll see only here on Mississippi Live, is that this is really one solid round and then done. And what that means for folks as I go back here to analysis mode on Mama Justice Doppler radar for a second, and I'm going about 3 different places here, so let's get it on the right thing here for a moment. When we look at this, that instantly tells me that you get back here toward the Memphis area, we're not going to see a secondary round for you. Once you get past this kind of main line here, you're done unless something changes dramatically as far as a tornado threat is concerned. So like Maggye, for example, there in Senatobia, I think we're done with her. Jonestown, Elaine, West Helena, Shelby, hopefully we're done as well. Now we're going to see down here Cleveland and Greenville. You're still close enough. But I think Hernando, the Memphis area, back up into far northwest Mississippi, I would put you in the done category. I'm going to bring Maggye in for her opinion on that as well, as I see she's looking at some Mississippi Department of Transportation cameras and some other things around there. Thoughts on that after looking at Storm Finder?
No, I completely agree. I know we were talking about maybe a secondary round and situations like that, but with the amount of rain and things coming in right now, it's going to make it very, very difficult. I think that's why after right now, we're watching that line come into Northwest Mississippi. I'm looking at it here. You can see Kraft Goodman Road over closer to Olive Branch, rain starting to come in. I was watching the roads. I'm trying to look at local roadways, seeing some ponding on roads is what I was really looking at. But again, after that heavy rain comes in, it's going to be hard for the atmosphere to kind of pick itself back up, get fuel enough to have another round coming in back today. So I think that's why after right now, the line shifts in, our focus shifts further down to the south and east, where we're talking about more of northeast Mississippi as this line comes in to an environment that hasn't been touched, where fuel is ample, where those winds are out of the south, and those storms can really tap into that. So that's something we're going to be watching. Again, I'm looking at those MTOT traffic cameras because another thing we're going to be watching, other than the tornado threat, is still the flooding concern that we have today with a lot of rain still falling or fell on Monday. We got a little bit of a break yesterday, and now we're seeing it again. I know you guys are saying, I always point to the wrong direction on this, but it's rating pretty good over in Cleveland. So yeah, Cleveland, the Delta, Northwest Mississippi, really getting in on it. People have been asking as well, and I think we're generally out of the clear or in the clear. What Matt said here in Northwest Mississippi. However, if you're traveling anywhere Northeast Mississippi going in later in the day, that's just not going to be the same story. So I encourage you, if you're asking about your location, we've gotten a lot of emails asking about specific locations. We are putting a forecast together. The best thing that you can do is stay on this live stream, pay attention to when your town gets named and where your town is in comparison to the overall timing that we're doing. And also, you can always see the latest forecast on our app under the tab Fastcast, our latest thing on that as well, and our website. So just other things to keep in touch with us, Matt, in between these live streams. Of course, we'll continue to update that as well.
Absolutely. Appreciate that, Maggye. Maggye, I know you have to hop up, take care of some family business, make sure Maggye Maya gets, yeah, exactly. Gets a little lunch. Go ahead and hop off and do that. If something extreme happens, I'll text you. I'll bing you and say, hey, like let's get a second opinion on this here. But go ahead and hop off.
I will. I'll be paying attention. Is all I have to say. So we'll see you in a few hours, maybe.
I have no doubt. Hopefully it doesn't get too terribly bad. I appreciate that. Maggye there in Senatobia joining us again here on Mississippi Live. Okay, Caleb, I told you, let me know when they issue the new advisory. It still hasn't come out. We're about 5 minutes over at this point here, and it typically runs about 10 minutes, 15 minutes ahead. So they're really about 15 minutes behind on this, which is always interesting to see how they display this. So who are we talking about when we say we? This is the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma. These are meteorologists who spend their entire career looking at kind of the broad scale way in which things happen. So they put out these alerts, they put out fire weather alerts, and then they're the ones who put out the severe thunderstorm and tornado watches that we give. All the warnings, that comes from local weather service offices. And so right there, you can see that the new adjustment coming in on the overall severe risk. Just a second. So they have maintained that. And Caleb, kind of looking at this, and I'm going to pop this kind of behind you as well in the background. It does look like they have kind of maintained the level 2 out of 5 risk, although maintaining kind of a large area where it's in play today, kind of looking at that. And it looks like the tornado risk similar as well, right?
Yeah, I think the only difference that I see, because I can actually still see it on the monitor here before it's updated, they kind of shaved the slight risk down on eastern portions of Arkansas and pretty much to the Mississippi River. So seeing that level 1 kind of creep back in towards DeSoto County, not as expanded as it was in the previous run. So good thing to see the level 2 decrease and no level 3 get put out. So definitely good news as we get ready for the afternoon hours ahead.
The other thing I noticed about that, basically they did what we just talked about a moment ago. They cut some folks out, as you said, so that's exactly what you just said. But the reason that's a good thing and important is by cutting some folks out there kind of in the northwest part of the state, that kind of reaffirmed what we just said a second ago. So like Horn Lake out here north of Clarksdale, those odds, maybe even Senatobia or Maggye is a little behind that main line. Most likely to be kind of out of the worst of this today, unless something goes dramatically sideways. And luckily, all the storms are a little below severe limits at this point as well. I'm pull up regular Mama Justice Doppler radar for a moment. And yeah, this is all below severe limits. But one thing to kind of keep in mind, Caleb, as we're kind of looking at this, and I'll pop it to where you're a little bigger as well as we're talking about this. But that storm near Marks there, that one does have some at least broad rotation. It's going to be some spots there along leading edge that will have more when these storms kind of try to move through this afternoon. So we'll have some that have some rotation, but that one not in a position to produce tornadoes yet, but that would be one of them that, when we're looking at these rotation tracks, that's why it's depicting it. That is a rotation track with it. It's just not high-end rotation, right?
Yes, no, I agree. And I think one of the interesting things with where we're heading into the afternoon is we're kind of getting in between those two radar sites. So it's going to start becoming a little bit more muggy as we go into the afternoon hours before it gets closer towards our Amory radar site. So I'm still just trying to keep an eye on those and also in respect to where the radar site is actually located. But the good news is it's not as prominent as what an alarming kind of rotation couplet could look like. So definitely good sign as we continue monitoring that as it pushes in further into North Mississippi.
Okay, so I'm going to bring it back in here. Appreciate that, Caleb, to our mobile room-to-room weather center. Let's kind of talk about the overall thoughts here. First off, this is probably one of the most important graphics that might seem the least important for a moment, but this shows, again, looking at some of the development in clouds here in this zone here south of Itawamba County, northern Monroe County, western Clay County there, stretching back closer to Kosciuszko. Everything south and east a little bit more unstable. We can see that, I think, also looking at the measure of moisture based on the same scale, the temperature or the dew point is the way we describe it there. I want to see how this is kind of behaving. Now, this one kind of catches it and kind of does not at the same point. Let's look at the temperature then, see if that maybe captures it more. I don't think either of those does a great job. That means we're going to have to go kind of ugly on this and show some ugly data, because I think it does maybe a better job. So give me a moment to kind of pull up. If you've watched us from time to time, you know the ugly data we show. And the reason I want to go there on this is I think it gives us the best look. So give me a moment while I kind of populate that in here behind the scenes. So appreciate y'all for watching us on Instagram, on Facebook, on all the different platforms. You're watching Mississippi Live Weather. And again, we are a 24/7 streaming service. Join the conversation. We'll try to kind of answer some of those questions there as well. And give me a moment. I'll go and, I guess, pop it over here to kind of my gross. Again, same thing we're looking at, but I have to kind of add in some layers on this. So let's add in station plots, which will give us the dew points, the measure of moisture there. The other on rivers, counties, and a bunch of highways if we can. So again, this, that's awfully small. Let me see if I can find a better way to do this. I think we want to try, I should be able to zoom this in a little bit more. Nope. There we go. That zooms that in. Now I just have to kind of get it in the right spot of the screen. Okay, so here's what I'm looking at with this. Pan that. There we are. Okay. You can kind of see this, and it might not be perfectly evident. So what I'm looking at here is I'm looking at the, yeah, we're going to clean that off. I need something that's darker. Radar. There we go. That's fine. I can read a little better with radar. Okay. So I'm looking at 69 for that dew point there in the Columbus area, 71 in the Starkville area, upper 60s versus mid 60s out here. These two reporting stations showing up there in Oxford and back out in Western Carroll County. I guess that's basically Greenwood there versus east. Okay, so that's a little gross. What does that tell me? Why does it matter? So let's come back over here and let's go back to our satellite perspective we were looking at just a moment ago here. So what that tells me is that that these spots just a little east of this, let's go wide for a second, I'll kind of draw on there, are a little bit more humid. Not a lot, but a little bit more humid south and east here. So there's our kind of our line. Okay, so over here, our dew points are all close to 70 and 70 plus. Back out west, they are, say, somewhere around 65. So that difference there might not sound like much, but it is substantial. That is the extra juice from, you know how, I'm going to try not to make a sports reference. Anyway, where there's less unstable air and more unstable air. And the extra little juice we have here, whatever boundary between those two areas, that is one of the things that we get concerned. If you get a storm to develop along this boundary, that's going to be one of them that has that enhanced chance to possibly see a tornado. And if storms hit the boundary from the west, then they will have some extra rotation at that point in time, and then that enhances that chance that maybe you see a brief tornado from this here. I see someone, again, Robin, mentioning watching from Grenada, absolutely terrified. Nowhere seems a safe place to be. Everybody has a threat today, but you absolutely have safe places. Let's be clear about that for a moment here. There are safe places out there, and we have a list of those on our website, msliveweather.com. I'm going to pull up again the storm shelters we have across North Mississippi here. This is, what's important is to be prepared. We don't want you to be scared. That's just not good for you. It's not good for us. Not good for anybody. So we have a list of storm shelters here across North Mississippi on our website. It is not comprehensive, but it has a lot of them. You can check it out at msliveweather.com. If you have the app and you hit kind of that three lines in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, there's a drop down there where you have the storm shelters around the area. So I would definitely say it does nobody any good to be scared of what's going on out there. Instead, we just think about, okay, where would I shelter if tornadoes happen? So identify those in Clay County, like a couple of the fire stations there. I know that there are more than what we have on this list here, and at some point we will get this list, I think, fully up to date. There have been some new ones that have come out this year. If you do have questions and you're in Grenada County, for example, you're like, wait, that's only one, you can typically call the county courthouse. They'll let you know, hey, what shelters are there? Will they be open? Where will they be open? So, we don't want anybody to be scared on this. We just want to make sure that we're prepared. I see Chrissy asking about the Hernando area. Are you already done there? I think it's going to be difficult for these storms to get back going for you there in the Hernando area. So fingers crossed that you're in better shape there, because I think behind this main line, it's less of a likelihood. Byhalia, another one of those spots where it's less of a likelihood. That everybody ahead of that, I see Tishomingo County, I see New Albany mentioned, I see Randolph and Columbus. You all still have that potential, Pontotoc and Tupelo, to have some rotating thunderstorms this afternoon. This is not a high likelihood tornado event. This is not a high-end tornado event, but this is, if one forms, it could become as strong as maybe EF2 strength, and that would be a strong tornado. Maybe not an extreme tornado, but that would be a stronger tornado. We have to watch that potential there. So as you can see, again, there's the list of locations where we do have I'm going to stop that there from scrolling, but the list that we do have on our website. So those of you on the various versions of TikTok and Instagram and all that kind of things, you can find that at msliveweather.com and just search for shelters. So we're going to bring it back in here. I'll bring our meteorologist Caleb Edelblut back in as he's kind of monitoring things as well behind the scenes. I got to click over to make sure I'm on the right thing to bring Caleb back in here. Caleb, you've also been kind of looking at the chat. Are there any other things that, people have really been talking about that we need to address that we haven't gotten to?
Well, I have been looking at the chat. I think most of what I've seen is just them talking about how sunny it is, where they're at, and how they don't really want to see the sunshine today. That's kind of something that we hit on earlier. But I also wanted to give you a quick update. We just got a special weather statement for North Mississippi as we kind of see a line continue moving on through it. It's for Marshall, Tippah, Benton, and southeastern Fayette counties into Tennessee as well. Just showing kind of the main hazard was just wind blowing on through around 45 miles per hour. So are starting to see some of those kind of alerts start to pop up. Good news is for those polygons, I think special weather statements are kind of the best one we would like to see. Do what?
What's a polygon?
The polygon?
What's a polygon?
Well, I mean, technically it's like a specific shape, but like the lines that you see on radar, or
is it sort of a box?
I mean, I think you.
Yeah, I hate the word polygon. I think it's one of those where it's like polygon. It makes it sound like it's special. No, it's a box.
That's true. Okay, I can go with box from now on. I think that's a lot better.
That's a pet peeve. I don't think that's a life or death pet peeve, but that's a pet peeve.
That's good to know. Good to know. But yeah, no, just wanted to give you that update. But so far, I think the good news while I'm reading the chat is not a lot of people are kind of freaking out about this, and I think that's a good thing because like we were mentioning earlier, I mean, there are certain ingredients here for this level 2 out of risk, but I don't think this is a slam dunk forecast and situation where we're seeing something as intense as maybe yesterday up there into Indiana and Illinois. So,
yeah, nothing like that.
Yeah, no, we're good. It's just we can handle some thunderstorms, hear some rumbles of thunder, and I'd say overall the general mood in the chat has been pretty positive today, so definitely a good sign to see.
Well, and let's be clear, tornadoes are absolutely still on the table. Like, yeah. I don't want to imply that they're not. But at least it's generally, a mood of preparedness as opposed to fear. That is always kind of the goal that we're looking for here. One thing I noticed behind you there, looking on our camera there in Pontotoc, I'm watching the shadows of these clouds kind of moving fairly quickly over top of the trees there You can see kind of the coloration or discoloration of the trees based on the shadows there. 75 the temperature. That dew point coming in at 66 in Pontotoc. Again, that's kind of on the drier side of that boundary where we've had a little more unstable air. You go kind of on the more moist side of it down there toward Caledonia. Our camera there in Caledonia coming in 78, and that dew point up at 68. Not as high as some other spots there, but that's still pretty high. And I think the difference there, that little difference, could be one of the factors that helps those storms to be a little stronger again this afternoon. We go split the difference there and go up to Amory. Again, I want to address and talk specifically to you folks there again in Amory. We know you've seen some big tornadoes over the years. It always seems like Monroe County gets hit. You are in the zone that we are concerned again this afternoon that we could have some of these rotating thunderstorms move through. It's unlikely we're going to have one of those high-end tornadoes, but could we still have one that is strong enough to damage well-built structures? Yes, I think that is possible, but this is not likely an obliteration sort of situation for tornadoes. Thankfully, this is not high-end tornadoes. When we look at the tornado threat here, specifically for locations that we've just mentioned a moment ago there, the tornado threat does involve, again, all locations. And I'll kind of, I guess, leave up our line I drew on here a minute ago where we kind of have that boundary. You know, that's why you notice it's kind of equally spread on either side of that. That if we get all the way up here to, say, Itawamba County and we haven't had a tornado form, the odds of it forming become a lot lower. They're more likely going to form down here, Yazoo City, Hollandale, Greenwood, Kosciuszko, Ackerman, toward around Starkville, and move northeast from there if they're going to form. And let's be clear, this thankfully is still an if situation, but if they form, the strong tornado potential is there. Now, I do want to address this for a moment ago, and I'll pop up our chat because I know this is always a question people ask over and over again here behind the scenes, but as we kind of pop up our chat, looking at this, Senatobia, you're out of that strong tornado threat. Hernando, northern Marshall County, they're out of the strong tornado threat, as is Jonestown, Elaine, West Helena, Tunica. You're not completely out of the tornado threat in some of those locations. You can make an argument maybe to see one up here, but I think, again, it's less and less likely as this line that's presently kind of moving through some of these locations tracks toward the east. Once you get behind it, we're stabilized somewhat, the temperature's cooler, and that threat is lesser. So, again, appreciate y'all for watching us here on in Amory. You know, someone wants to know what time should it hit Amory. Let's give you kind of a rough time frame here, going back to our storm rotation on one of our projections here, our HRRR model. So as we talk storm rotation on this, I'm going to make sure that this is the most recent everything in there. It is. So let's kind of walk through some timing on this for a moment for you. So I'm going to see if I can position this all on the screen where it needs to go. So there we go. I think I've got, you'd think after doing this so long, I could position everything in the same spot. Okay, so this gives you kind of rough timing. Again, one model at one time here. You can see how this also says, wow, the next hour or so, some of these should be a lot stronger than they are. I think what that is depicting right there, if we come back to present mode on a Mama Justice Doppler radar, is that is kind of depicting these storms we have out there now in their broad rotation. So again, when we look at the rotation track on this, sometimes the rotation potential is a little bit inflated because of that. I'll delete out that initial point there. So again, I think some of this initial rotation probably somewhat inflated between now and, say, 1 o'clock or so. But the concern is that as we head toward 2 to 3 o'clock, we have some of these thunderstorms coming out of Arkansas here toward the leading edge where we have more moisture with a little bit of extra rotation. And kind of looking at this, this is a different version, I think, than what we had a little bit earlier on. I want to kind of double check down here and look at this. Slightly different version than what we had when we started this live stream. This still has some of those thunderstorms from near Ackerman up here toward the Golden Triangle. These are going to be the ones we're going to watch very closely. We are hopeful that they just rotate and don't produce tornadoes, but being ahead like that and more unstable air, sometimes they do all of the above. But there are a lot of spots there where this kind of is targeting where we could have, some of those rotating thunderstorms be a little stronger. So let's talk timing again. Timing's where we got onto this here. So again, Futurecast could be our storm rotation a little bit slow here. But for timing purposes, we're looking here at, say, in the Grenada, Bruce, Tupelo, Boonville, north and westward. Storms will be moving through your location between now and, say, 3 p.m. That's our time frame for you. Obviously, farther east, a little bit later on there. And then continuing the afternoon, perhaps beyond that, for Fulton, for Chickasaw County and Houston there, for Bruce, we're probably somewhere in the 1 to 4 p.m. arrival time there. Again, I think our futurecast here is just a little slow. And for Amory, somewhere probably in the 3, that might be a little slow, 2 to 5 time period there for Amory is when storms should be arriving. We hope they don't wait after that. That would mean the atmosphere has sustained, before we get there. And then southeast to Amory, closer to Columbus, Louisville, Macon, we're more in that 4 to 7 p.m. time period with storms arriving. And one of the things we want to emphasize is after this kind of initial batch here, I think the most significant weather will be all south of us. And hopefully that means all out of here. So again, time frame, Gabe made this graphic last night, and I think it's still pretty close. Let's see here. Oh. Yeah, there we are. I still think this is pretty close on its timing here. So as you can see, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. in these locations where you see in blue here, kind of latest possible arrival time, closer to that 4 p.m. time period there. Again, gives you an idea here for south between Water Valley and Eupora, arrival time there. Again, I think that 2 p.m. could be a little bit slow on that. Maybe that needs to be kind of moved up to 1 p.m. there for some spots on the far northwest portion of this. But really in this zone here, it does include Houston, Eupora, and Tupelo. There sometimes. I think this is probably a little bit slow. I think I could probably adjust each of those just a little bit. So let me make that adjustment here for a moment on the times to kind of bump those forward just a little bit. So just a second to do that. Let's just take off an hour there. We'll say 4. And that 11 is probably too late at this point here. So let's just say 10. Let's adjust this one here. And we'll say 1. 8's probably a little slow. 7. And then the top one here, obviously now. Until 4 p.m. is not bad there. I think that's not unreasonable. And I'm going to change. We'll see if I can change the graphic just a little bit with this. We're presently live right now, ... Hey, y'all. Make sure to share these live streams with everybody. That's somebody I know pretty well. And they're like, hey, you're really quiet today. No, we're not. We're live. So make sure your friends and family know. So if you're willing to click share on these live streams when they go out, that could be one of those things that, makes a difference for somebody else. So certainly recommend that you do that to make sure your friends and family know when bad weather is kind of moving toward them. So we appreciate all of you that naturally do that already, but certainly recommend that as something that we would kindly ask that you consider doing as well. So again, for all of you that do that already, thank you so much. Appreciate all of you for supporting us that do that as well. I'm going to adjust our angle here down just a little bit more like that. I think that timing is more reasonable. I could probably scoot that back there, northwest there. Now that I look at that, there we go. And we'll click save. And there's an updated graphic for you to kind of work off of there. So again, here's kind of your timing, north and west here from Corinth to Holly Springs to Senatobia to Clarksdale. For the timing, for those of you at home, if you need to, snap a picture of this. I'll try to not stand over too many locations at this point here. I'll get kind of as far off as I can get in this direction. Actually, I should be able to widen it. That'll give me a place to stand on it as well. Except for whatever reason, the lines come off. Well, that's an experience. Hold on. Let's go into that. Never mind. I'll have to talk to Gabe on the way we made that. Made it too 3D for you. Anyway, here are your times. So snap a picture, send it to a friend, and make sure that you share, like, subscribe, follow, and download, whether you're on the Instas, whether you're on the TikToks. We will try to be live here in those situations and all of the different social media platforms as well. Our live broadcasts, we have those every single day of the week at 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. Are live Monday through Friday at 5, 6, and 10, and 6:37 and 7:30 a.m. here in the Room to Room Weather Center. But to be crystal clear, we anticipate that we are probably going to be alive much, 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 much earlier than that today. And so not just so the live stream for alerts, but to make sure that you're not relying on anything else, make sure you have Weather Call. It is a phone alert that will let your family know if you're in the danger zone. You can sign up for more information by snapping a screenshot of this. Maybe this is the screenshot you send your kids, your grandkids, your spouse, to let them know, hey, there's a way to find out if there's a bad weather. And the reason a phone call matters is if a phone call hit any of the extra phone devices I have around here or this one, it'd start ringing right now. I was lucky I saw that text message a second ago. I typically don't during active weather. But if it'd been a phone call from my wife, I'd look down, I'd answered it. And so phone calls are disruptive. Phone calls break through and can save lives. So make sure to sign up at msliveweather.com for the latest there. Okay, so as we kind of wrap things up here for a moment, again, here is your severe risk timing for today. For those of you behind the scenes that watch us from time to time, you may or may not know this. One of the things that we do before we wrap things up typically is I'll say a little prayer before we get in. So we're going to go do that. And then we'll be here to track the weather as it moves through, knock on wood. Hopefully it's not too terribly bad later on today. So God, please help us. Please protect us. Give me the words to guide these people to not for my glory, but instead for protecting your people. God, I pray that you give them wisdom and knowledge for what they need to do next today. Help them to stay ahead of these storms, to have a supernatural ability to know what's going on, to be good stewards of the information, passing it along to their friends and family to make sure they're aware and they're safe. But protect us. Just help us to be smart. Help the convergence to not align with that boundary as well, so that storms are weaker. Help there to be something that we have glaringly missed that we can look back tonight and say, haha, we missed that. Sorry, haha. Because I'd much rather eat crow than have to go to somebody's house that was destroyed. So God, just protect us, guide us, and help us. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Oh, thank you so much for this platform, for this opportunity, the ways you've blessed me and my family in ways far beyond we deserve. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, so we will see you coming up here again. Once we start to get some warnings in on this, I'll look again at radar here for a moment before we're all the way done on Mama Justice Doppler, just to make sure there's nothing else immediately. We'll get a storm tracker too on that storm up there in Benton County. But it remains still pretty weak, all things considered, as we kind of look at the wind mode on that. I do see a little bit of maybe broad rotation up there north of Ashland, south of Spring Hill on a direction to take it toward Brownfield. Let's check the speed on this for a moment. So have it right about there. Let's make this a 30-minute loop. And we'll do some math. So right about there. Is that the right spot? It's 20, so we're going about 40 miles per hour. 40, 42 miles per hour is the speed on this. So let's go back here to the regular rainfall mode on Mama Justice Doppler radar in current time period. And let's track this ahead. So I show that, again, Ashland, Hickory Flat. There's kind of an area there in between that's a little bit stronger. So we show Potts Camp about 1206 for you, 1210 there for Ashland, Canaan at 1212, New Canaan at 1213, Pine Grove at 1218. What do we have there? Gravestown about 1227, Brownfield, which again, northern part of the county, that for you at 1235, Faulkner at 1239, Columbia at 1241, Pocahontas there at 1243. As we kind of advance that forward beyond that, let's see here. I said Pocahontas at about 1243. was the last one there. So let's go ahead and make that now the first one and continue that list. We show Essery Springs at 1244, Sulphur Springs at 1253, Raymer at 102, and then 102 also for Selmer, Tennessee. So that is a little bit north on there. But as I see somebody behind the scenes probably joined us a little late here asking, what about West Point? The overview as we kind of shut things down, and we'll be back when the threat is greater. But as we kind of work to shut things down here for a moment, severe risk involves all locations. The exception is Northwest Mississippi, where that risk is somewhat more limited. I think it's reasonable. Hold on. Give me a moment here. One thing that I am going to be very clear about, as I see it coming through the chat there, is we are going to have a fairly low tolerance for things that are spam. So you see right there, that spammy thing right there, we're blocking that person there as well. So Annabella, bye-bye. We're not doing that. So we're going to keep this thing clean today. I know sometimes it gets wild during severe weather. We're not going to have it up the entire time, but let's keep it clean. Let's be considerate of other people. Express what you need to express in there, but understand there are people from 99 to 9 that get in this chat. So be kind and cautious with those people as well. And we'll do our best to try to monitor it. I'm not going to be able to necessarily catch everything like that, but we're going to do our best to we're going to ban some people if that's what they're going to do. So appreciate y'all for doing that. Again, join the conversation on the different social medias here. But the thing I want to hit is, again, the tornado threat. For those folks that are just now joining us, does involve all locations, but there is an enhanced area where tornadoes that could be strong are possible. I think that includes all locations here across North Mississippi. The thing to keep in mind here is why the reason there's kind of a greater color level for Oxford, Amory, South, and East. You're more likely to get the storm to develop there, but if it develops there, and if a tornado moves far enough north, it's up here at Tishmingo, Franklin County, Alabama, Marion, Lamar County, then it's more likely that that could end up being a strong tornado, EF2 or stronger. There will be some damaging wind out of this line of storms today. That threat enhanced a bit more towards central Mississippi and south Mississippi, where multiple damaging wind lines are more possible. We have, I think, in my opinion, a slightly greater see a tornado up here in the northern part of the state, depending on exactly how all the boundaries end up working out. You spam, you get banned. Yolanda, you nailed that there. We will see you again coming up here. Our next live broadcast, as it is scheduled now, is coming up at 5 p.m., but we'll be on before that for sure. 6 p.m., 10 p.m., every night of the week we're here. Keep it here for the latest. Ooh, and this is what I forgot. I knew I was forgetting something. We'll bring it back in here, and I'll pop this up. For those of you on social media watching us, and this is going to pop down a couple times as my name key is designed to be in there for a minute and then it takes it down. So I'm going to pop this up a couple times. If you're watching us on social media, and I'm going to kind of flip this up here for the folks on, on the Instas, we'll go ahead and decline. I don't know who is randomly trying to co-host it on the TikToks. Yes, I intentionally like saying it like an old person. Those QR codes that you see there get you to our app. It is the easiest and safest way for you to get the information we're talking about here. And at some point, we will live stream on TikTok, on Instagram. We're not there quite yet. I can show you behind the scenes. That's what it'll look like when the time comes. But I don't have it quite ready to go out there yet, unfortunately. So you're stuck with this for a little while longer. Drag the puzzle. Interesting. You've detected inactivity in your current live. Okay, well, I don't understand. I guess they're wanting me to say something. Whatever. We're shutting this down. We'll see you coming up a little later on today. Keep it here for the latest.
Look at Wanda, ready to rock her big presentation. But first, lunch. Sweet Pepper's Deli. Delicious, celebratory, but is it quick? The Cobb salad. Tender oven-roasted chicken, topped with cheese. Prepared, plated, and served? In 6 minutes? Is this for real? Well, of course. Well done, Wanda. Sweet Pepper's Deli. Yes, ma'am. life is sweet.